Hey there, welcome to the TBH with Toby B. Hemingway podcast. This is the monthly wrap-up of essays from my Substack, TBH, which you can get at tbhemingway.substack.com. Subscribe there for weekly emails, normally weekly, with an essay and a drawing. You know the drill. So please subscribe here if you haven't already. Give us 5 stars, all that fun stuff. October is at an end. I'm recording this on Halloween. Ooh, Halloween. Halloween is still a strange time for me as an Australian-born American. But my kids love it. They went to school in their costumes this morning. They will come home and put their costumes back on to go trick-or-treating tonight. I will try to stop them from eating too much candy, but they're going to go nuts anyway. I'm not planning on dressing up. Just throwing that out there. It feels like so much work. I don't know. Not my thing. It's been a crazy month because as I've been writing about this election, which sounded like a good idea at the time. It's bummed me out a little bit, but on the other hand, I think it's been good to process a few of these feelings. And the story I posted today about Halloween and about Trump and his gang hanging out at Madison Square Garden for a rally, just like the Nazis in 1939. That's been really sad to think about, but I think useful too. I was in Oklahoma this month. I visited the Bob Dylan Center there in Tulsa. Never been to Oklahoma. I wrote about it. Hopefully 1 or 2 pieces on that will get published soon elsewhere. But that was confronting historically too. Oklahoma, it turns out, is where just about every one of the trails of tears of Native Americans forced off their lands by soldiers in the 1800s. That's where they ended up. They sent them all to Oklahoma, right in the middle of the country. No one wanted it. There you go. Live there. To hell with your traditions, and years and years and years and years and years and years of living in a certain place and it being a part of your culture. See you later. So that was confronting. And then there's a lot of Black history in Oklahoma, which is in some ways related to the Native American history. That was confronting. Sometimes it feels like living in America is just a never-ending history lesson, and a lot of it's quite shocking and sad. But it does give you perspective on things like the Trump phenomenon and how it can happen and what you need to be aware of, in your own life, especially as a white guy, especially as one of the colonizers, as people these days like to acknowledge. So anyway, yeah, man, big month. What else did I write about? Oh, I wrote about going to see the vice presidential debate in a bar. That'll be the first piece, I think. I did the audio's terrible. I'm sorry, because I was in a rental car using my phone, reading this quick story from Oklahoma. So bear with that. It's not very long. I wrote about Donald Trump working at McDonald's for 2 minutes. Wow, that's just classical political theater. Amazing campaign nonsense. And then, about what I was talking about Halloween and Trump's masks and all that stuff going down at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, not fun. If you've read them already, thank you. If you're subscribing to either of these things, I thank you. I will talk to you all on the other side of this crazy election. hopefully by the end of November, we know who our president is going to be, and there hasn't been any, oh my God, politically motivated acts of violence or anything like that. And we can move on to the rest of our lives and what is referred to here as the holiday season. Fun. Thanks again. Enjoyed the stories. Debate night at the bar from October 3rd, 2024. My favourite dive bar in our neighbourhood is a tiny box tucked into the seemingly endless row of businesses that is Sepulveda Boulevard. You can get anything on Sepulveda, the kids and I often remark. At the cinema bar, it's a reasonably priced drink in a dark room, 7 nights a week, no questions asked. On the right night, you may even catch a live band squeezed onto the corner stage. This past Tuesday night, I was there to see a very different kind of performance. Walking in at around 1 minute before 6 p.m, the bar's one modest TV screen was already tuned in for introductions to the 2024 vice presidential debate. The stereo was blasting Metallica until the candidates appeared and volumes were properly adjusted by the barman. "Let's go," said the spectacled man next to me, nursing an ice water he occasionally reached into for a cube to crunch on. I used to work in bars like the cinema during my university years in Australia. Rough and intimidating as these places can be, I still find drinking houses of this ilk oddly comforting. I could picture both candidates here. Tim Walls, the cheery regular who always manages to leave right before things get wild, and JD Vance, the rich guy who still hasn't shouted a goddamn drink in his life. Through COVID restrictions, I kept a close eye on the cinema bar, always relieved when I spotted the cheap neon open sign alight. Somehow, like most old dives through that strange cocktail of hard work, community, and alcoholism, it persevered and emerged largely unchanged. Another windowless refuge of the American neighbourhood, where time almost stands still. The sun was setting when I arrived. I took my place at the bar as its last rays crept defiantly through the kind of glass blocks made popular in the 80s for privacy, set in the front wall like bricks. I ordered a beer, and looking down the bar, the rest of the tiny room faded into semi-darkness. The only other patron besides me and the man next to me was an older woman with bottle black hair, her face lit up by a cell phone screen held too close as she struggled to order a pizza online. "What?" she mumbled into her screen, squinting as the first question was lobbed at the candidates. Initially to a nervous and even slightly shaky Walls, his balding head looking more bare than ever under the blinding TV lights. "Here we go," yelled my barmate, slapping a hand on the rail and turning toward me for support. The moderator mentioned Iran, soliciting him to yell, "Blow it up," and received the first of many side eyes from our barman. "Turkey or beef pepperoni?" continued the woman on the phone. She looked at the TV eventually, but politics be damned, this smoked meat puzzler seemed to be her most pressing decision du jour. When she did eventually turn to the debate, she would just as quickly turn away in a motion of exhausted disgust. Judging from her murmurs, I'd place her as a Jesus Christ Democrat. Not religious, but as in, Jesus Christ, we're still arguing about this shit? I can relate. In that predictable and tread-worn way, the debate dragged on. They're like airplane safety announcements at this point. You listen as much as you can to be polite, but most of us have heard it all so many times before, we soon just go back to our conversations or more immediate concerns. "Susie, where's the pizza at?" barked my barmate. "It's coming." "He from Ohio?" the man went on, to no one in particular, pointing at JD Vance on screen. I wasn't biting, but the barman nodded. "Ohio's a fucking dump," said the man. "You been there?" the barman asked him. "Nope." "Then how the fuck do you know, Ernie?" Another woman came in and introduced herself to me. She thought I'd played a gig there recently. "I did 20 or so years ago," I told her. We had a quick conversation about live music, then she joined Susie at the end of the bar. The debaters moved on to the cost of living. Ernie asked me how much my beer was. $7, I told him. "Shit," he replied. "You know what, Ernie?" said the barman. "Shut up. It's $7.50 for a bud at Cozy Inn. His probably be $9. "That right?" I said. Pretty soon the debate had lost this small crowd almost completely. My barmate, Ernie, kept threatening to reveal who he had decided to vote for, but no one cared, and he was distracted by his stomach anyway. "I'm hungry, Susie," he said. "It's coming," she replied, then looked at her phone. "I think he's lost." "Shut up, man," said the barman to Ernie. For one reason or another, so many times I lost count. I got the sense he didn't want him to offend the new guy, to scare away another customer. "You know what's popular now?" the barman asked me, changing the topic of conversation. "Gin shots." "Shots?" I replied. "Yeah, kids come in and want gin shots." I guess the world really is that sad. The barman just shook his head. As the final questions were asked and the candidates took their last best swings, the delivery man arrived, carrying a pizza box the size of a small coffee table. A couple of jabs about his tardiness, his mumbled explanation ignored, and without so much as a thank you, he knew to immediately take his leave. The pizza was cold, I was told, but everyone ate heartily. Ernie took off no sooner than his share was done. Susie offered me a slice, then the barman did too, but I had to be on my way and was home in time to say goodnight to my son. "Was everyone drunk?" he asked me from his bed. "You know what?" I said. "I have no idea." A very rough draft from October 10th, 2024. Editorial note, I apologise for the audio. I was sitting in a rental car outside a diner in Oklahoma City, recording on my phone. This week I was going to write about assassination attempts and dumb angry rallies and flags that are so big they hang on two cranes and grown men losing their minds in public and a population largely doing the same, and how a person might just snap. How we all just want it to stop, and how for some well-armed lunatics that impulse can probably get very violent very quickly. But I couldn't. I couldn't do it to you, and I couldn't do it to myself either. I'm in Oklahoma working on another writing project. Between my California ID and Australian accent, people mostly can't place me at all. That kind of anonymity is handy, so is being white. Still, when you're a coastal elite like me, you tend to have your guard up in these parts of America. It's tiring. But all this is tiring, isn't it? The silent conflict. I walked into the American Banjo Museum yesterday, and there was a sticker on each door reading "No firearms." No way, no siree, not here. How is that necessary? We all know how, but still, it's exhausting. I was just hoping to see Kermit's axe from Rainbow Connection. Now I'm thinking about senseless, deadly violence. This morning, around the corner from my motel, I saw a Harris Walls lawn sign. That gave me some hope. Now I'm off to visit the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum at the site of the federal building bombing. Then maybe take in some disheartening local Black and Native American history. Just to remind myself that none of this is new. That America is still, 46 presidents in, a very rough draft. Clown Show from October 23rd, 2024. Election season is deep in the dread phase, when the first Tuesday in November looms on the calendar darkly, like an upcoming school exam or dental procedure. Something you know has to happen, and you can't really do anything to change, but you can't do much to prepare either. That's the real bummer. It's not like anyone with half a brain is still undecided, and I think I know who the half-brains are voting for. I'll cast my vote, probably by mail before Election Day. Going to the polls can be nice, to actively exercise one's constitutional right, and I may choose to drop my completed ballot off at one. But there's a real desire to get the formalities out of the way too, to spend the 5th just doing whatever, something fun, goofing off. Maybe I'll catch a movie. I do that sometimes when the world is all too much. In recent weeks, it's felt like Donald Trump is already well into that stage. He's given up on debates or real press appearances, and has taken to simply lapping up the adoration of his fully committed base, live and in person. At a recent rally, he just played music for the most part, and stood on stage swaying. an image surreal as it was frightening. Bad enough for half of the artists or their estates to send cease and desist letters. Not all publicity is good publicity, after all. To a certain extent, I get it. There's nothing left to say. But was there ever? Campaigns have become less and less about policy in my lifetime, and more about personality, or at least a version of one's personality. There's nothing of merit to discuss that will capture most people's attention anymore, really. I tried listening to some of Kamala Harris's recent podcast appearances, but grew bored. They were so often so self-consciously unpolitical, faux personal. I don't really care about carefully selected elements of her family life, or where she went to school, or whether or not she really worked at a McDonald's once, or what she likes to eat. That's all her business. She can bore her in-laws with it. Professionally, I think her resume speaks more than loudly enough of her competency. We don't need to be buds. Hired. Is this the logical extension of the social media era, where we make people famous and important for sharing every inch of themselves online, where regular folks still show you whatever they're about to eat, where mummy bloggers push their kids into the frame just to maximize the likes, and buff bros take you on a shirtless, fictionalized fitness journey, where the parasocial has quietly outranked the social. This is something I worry about when I write essays. Am I really telling you a story, actual entertainment or insight, or just oversharing personal information like every other jerk with access to the internet? I try hard to make sure it's not the latter, but the tide is strong. People crave that silicone simulacrum of human connection. Not even our most powerful public citizens can resist dishing it up. Maybe that's how we got Trump taking questions in the window of a McDonald's drive-thru this week. The perfect shareable image, another crafty brand collab, much more catchy and fun than his actual horrifying political plans. What a great place to be asked tough questions too. I wish every argument I've ever had with my wife could be restaged with me in the window of a McDonald's drive-thru, wearing the apron and pretending to take orders. Her standing out in the sun 2 feet below me. I'd love to respond to that very astute point, love, but I think the fryer just dinged. Gone. In reality, I'm not gone, and a recent months-long break from most social media has had me feeling more here than ever. More concerned with the people I can actually see or talk to, with the issues that really affect me, and that I can possibly affect in return. There's a feedback loop of doom in the press that social media is perfect for amplifying. It turns out that if you listen closely out in the world, most people aren't talking about politics all the time. Right now, that's a sacred, safe space. As for fast food, if you're like me, you're probably trying and failing to have your kids not hear the name McDonald's at all. Thanks a lot, Don. Who needs Ronald when we've got this clown? Creepy Crawly from October 31st, 2024. We're in a leap year, which I realise this week all US presidential election years are. An extra day of campaigning, I guess, courtesy of your old friend mathematics. None of which affects Halloween, still fittingly close to this more and more horrifying national spectacle. On Thursday night, the kids will stay up too late, transfixed by their hauls of fun-sized candy bars, counting and recounting the pieces, buzzing on waves of exhilaration from an overload of sugary treats. Less than a week later, us adults will stay up later than usual too, glued to TV screens, watching the counting and recounting of remote electoral districts in places you only ever hear about on leap years, vibrating with the anxiety that our children will wake up to a land ruled by a toddler. Halloween has never suited a candidate more than Donald Trump, right down to the pumpkin orange mask. A Halloween-themed article by Rhonda Garelick, published in The Cut on October 30th, 2017, is still, I think, the best interpretation of his personality and relationship to power I have ever read or heard. So I wanted to point you all in that direction this Halloween week. It's still how I see the man, the problem, the threat, the reality. Here's an excerpt. Donald Trump resolutely resisted the theatrical demands of his trick-or-treaters. He did not acknowledge their costumes or characters. He did not pretend to be scared or impressed. In other words, he would not or could not cede his adult power to these young princesses and superheroes. He would not even pretend to relinquish the reins of authority. And here's why. In order to play at shedding your power, you need to be confident of putting it back on again. You need to be enough at ease with your own authority to set it aside for a moment. Trump cannot do this. He could not play act appropriately with costume children because he himself is also in costume, dead set on play acting the role of competent president. He is holding on far too tightly to the trappings of that character ever to risk letting them go. Earlier this week, the Trump campaign engaged in a little cosplay that is more typical of their ilk, the faux Nazi kind. Or is it real Nazi at this point? Sometimes without the clarifying lens of history, it can be hard to spot the difference. 20,000 people showed up to Madison Square Garden in New York City for hours and hours of nationalist pageantry, thinly veiled white male grievance, and giddy anger. I was reminded through subsequent reporting that this wasn't the first time an event of this kind has taken place at the venue. In February 1939, the German-American Bund held an actual Nazi rally there. The Bund were the most influential of America's many pro-Hitler groups at the time. It was billed as a pro-American rally for true Americanism. Sound familiar? American flags were everywhere, and a huge portrait of George Washington adorned the stage backdrop. There's a chilling short documentary using found footage here. The man who rushes the stage is Isidore Greenbaum, a Jewish American who didn't plan his protest, yet couldn't withhold his rage. His beating and stripping are eerily reminiscent of Trump's brags about harming people who interrupt his events to this day. Greenbaum suffered a broken nose and a black eye, but never regretted his stance. He went on to serve America against the Nazis in World War II. Our son asked my wife and I where Halloween comes from this week. We roughly explained that it grew out of a long line of unrelated fall traditions, that many traditions are that way. They start out as one thing in some place, then somewhere else the season yields a similar idea, then another. Sooner or later, over time, cultures will adopt the ideas and form them into their own, seemingly unique manifestation. Blind to the reality of how something so normal might have grown from something seemingly so at odds with what they proclaim to be celebrating. Am I saying Trump's Madison Square Garden rally has definite, twisted, ugly, and undeniable roots in the Nazi rally of 1939 at the same location? Yes. Yes, I am. Happy Halloween. Are you scared yet? I just wanted to say something at the end of this essay. I know I've written a lot about Donald Trump since embarking upon this Electionland 2024 series, and I promise that was never my intention. I can't stand thinking about him. The only joy I find in drawing him, I've discovered, is in defacing the drawing or accentuating his flaws. Writing each week has helped me discover something too. Sadly, he is what this election season is all about, even at the expense of celebrating a potential first female and black president. I think it's why he commands so much press attention. What he has done to transform the Republican Party has transformed American culture too, at least on the outside. I know he's not alone. The world is littered with leaders like him, past and present, but his takeover of one half of America's party political institutions has proved to be earth-shifting in what it feels like to simply be American, and incredibly hard to look away from, sadly. I write about it to remind myself he's real, I think, that the threat is real and it seeps into everything. In case you find yourself wondering if it's really real too, I hope there's some comfort for you in that, at least. Well, that's October's stories. Thanks for making it all the way. I hope you enjoyed them. All the music here is either by my old band, Horse Stories, or me noodling around in the office here on guitar. I hope you will be back next month. Subscribe to the Substack in the meantime, please. tbhemingway.substack.com. Subscribe to this podcast, of course. Take care of yourselves. I hope November treats you well if you're in the US. Fingers crossed, guys. We can do this. See you soon.